My own daughter's Christmas dinner. She looked me in the eye and said, "You weren't on the list, Mum. This isn't your house anymore. You need to go." I drove home alone through a snowstorm. That night, I called my lawyer, and 3 days later, my daughter found out exactly what that phone call meant. My name is Donna, and I'm 67 years old. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia, in the same house my late husband Ted and I bought when we were 32 and thought we had our whole lives mapped out in front of us. We did, mostly. 40 years of marriage, one daughter we adored, two grandchildren who used to call me Grandma Donna and ask me to braid their hair. A good life. A full one. Ted died of a heart attack 4 years ago. Quick, the doctor said, as though that was supposed to help. One morning he was eating toast at the kitchen table, and by afternoon he was gone. After that, my daughter Rachel became everything. She lived 40 minutes away in Vernon with her husband Craig and their two kids, Lily and Owen. I told myself I was lucky. Not every widow had family so close. For the first 2 years after Ted died, Rachel called every few days. She'd bring the kids on Sundays, and I'd make her the lemon pound cake she'd loved since she was small. Craig was quiet but seemed decent enough. I babysat when they needed it. When Rachel mentioned they were struggling with the mortgage after Craig's hours got cut at the mill, I didn't hesitate. I transferred $22,000 from my savings. That's what you do. That's what Ted would have done. When Lily needed braces and their dental coverage had lapsed, I paid the orthodontist directly. $4,800. When Craig wanted to buy into his friend's landscaping business, Rachel called me on a Sunday evening, voice soft and careful the way it got when she wanted something. "Just a loan, Mum, $15,000. We'll pay you back once the season picks up." I sent it the following Tuesday. I didn't keep a running total. I should have. Looking back, I think I was afraid to. Something shifted about 8 months ago. The Sunday calls became every other week, then once a month. When I texted, Rachel would reply hours later with short answers. "Fine, busy, talk soon." I told myself she had a full life. 2 kids, a husband, a part-time job at the dental office in Vernon. People get busy. I knew that. But the invitations stopped. A long weekend in August when I'd always come for the kids' birthdays. Rachel said they were doing something small that year, just the 4 of them. In October, when I mentioned Thanksgiving, she said Craig's sister was hosting, and it was getting complicated. I sat at my kitchen table that night and stared at Ted's empty chair for a long time. A month before Christmas, I asked Rachel if she needed me to bring anything to dinner. She said she'd let me know. She never did. I assumed no news meant come as usual. I'd been going to her house for Christmas Eve dinner for 4 years running. I spent 3 days in the kitchen. Torzier, because Craig's family was from Quebec, and he always lit up when I made it. Sugar cookies decorated with the kids. A cranberry loaf. I wrapped gifts for Lily and Owen, nice ones, things I knew they'd wanted. I bought Rachel a cashmere cardigan in the dark green she always looked beautiful in. I bought Craig a good bottle of Okanagan Red. I drove the 40 minutes to Vernon in light snow, radio playing carols, feeling something close to peace for the first time in months. The driveway was full when I arrived. Cars I didn't recognize. Through the front window, the house blazed with light, and I could hear laughter and a child shrieking with delight. My heart lifted. I thought, this is what I needed, to be part of something again. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Rachel opened the door. The woman looking back at me wasn't the girl I'd raised. Her face was closed, almost blank, the way you look at someone you weren't expecting and aren't pleased to see. "Mum." Her voice was flat. "What are you doing here? It's Christmas Eve, sweetheart." My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. "I brought dinner and gifts for the kids." She didn't move to let me in. Behind her, I could see Craig's parents, his sister and her husband, a couple I'd never met, everyone holding drinks, warm and settled, mid-conversation. "You weren't invited," Rachel said, just like that, like it was obvious. Like I was a delivery person who'd rung the wrong bell. "This is our family Christmas." "I didn't think you were coming." "You never told me not to come." "I never told you to come either." She glanced back over her shoulder. Look, it's not a good time. You should head home before the roads get worse. Rachel. I heard my voice shake. I heard my voice shake. I have food. I have gifts for Lily and Owen. Leave them on the step. I'll grab them later. She was already stepping back. Drive safe, Mom. The door closed. I stood on that porch in the snow with a box of food I'd spent 3 days making and gifts wrapped in paper I'd chosen carefully. The cold went right through my coat. Inside, I heard someone laugh at something, and music started up, and the life I'd thought I was part of just continued without a single pause. I put everything down on the top step. I walked back to my car. I didn't cry. Not yet. The drive home was the longest 40 minutes I can remember. The snow had picked up, and I had to concentrate on the road, which was almost a mercy. It gave my mind something to do other than replay her face. She hadn't looked sorry. That was the thing that kept catching on something inside me. She hadn't looked conflicted or uncomfortable. She'd looked inconvenienced. I got home. I took off my coat. I sat in Ted's chair in the dark living room, and I thought about the last 8 months, the short texts, the canceled visits, the way she'd stopped asking how I was and had started each call with what she needed. And I thought about the money. 22,000, 15,000, nearly 5,000 for Lily's braces. Smaller amounts here and there, grocery runs when things were tight, a car repair, a vet bill for their dog. I hadn't added it up, but I did now, sitting in the dark on Christmas Eve. Just over $54,000 in less than 3 years. Every time I'd set money, Rachel had called more. Warmer. You're such a lifesaver, Mom. I don't know what we'd do. And then it would quiet down again until the next need. Ted used to say, people show you who they are eventually. You just have to be willing to look. I was looking now. I went to bed at 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. I lay there listening to the wind. And by morning, I knew what I needed to do. My lawyer's name is Patricia Drummond. She'd handled Ted's estate and had known us for years. I called her on the 27th, the first business day after the holiday, and she saw me that afternoon. Her office is on Bernard Avenue, small and warm and smelling like old wood and Earl Grey. Tell me what happened, she said. I did. All of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, Eleanor had you in her will for everything. Rachel, I said. Yes. The house, my RSPs, my TFSA, my life insurance through Sun Life, Ted's pension survivor benefit, everything. What are you thinking? I want to change it. All of it. Rachel gets nothing. My voice was steady. I'd surprised myself with how steady. I want everything to go to charity. The Kelowna Hospice Society. BC Children's Hospital. Maybe a scholarship fund at Okanagan College. The kind of thing Ted would have liked. Patricia didn't try to talk me out of it. She asked if I was certain. I told her I wasn't doing this in anger. I was doing it in clarity, and there was a difference. She believed me, I think, because she drafted the documents that same afternoon. I signed the new will on the 28th of December. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to undo what I'd spent years assuming was settled. Rachel called on New Year's Day. Her voice had that particular softness she used when she wanted something. Mom, Happy New Year. Listen, Craig's had an amazing opportunity come up. There's a guy he knows who's looking for investors in a cannabis operation up near Kamloops. We were thinking if you could help us out, maybe 40,000. It's a serious investment. There'd be returns. No, I said. A pause. Sorry. No, Rachel. I won't be lending money anymore. Her voice shifted. What does that mean? Is this about Christmas Eve? Mom, you weren't supposed to come. I thought I made that clear. You made nothing clear. You closed the door in my face. You're being dramatic. The softness was gone entirely now. It was one evening. You showed up unannounced at a family dinner. Honestly, it was a bit embarrassing. I thought about the tourist seating on her porch in the cold. The gifts for her children. I'm going to go now, I said. Mum, don't hang up. The 40,000, Craig is counting on this, and I hung up. She called back 4 times. Then the text started. Don't be like this. You're punishing us for one small misunderstanding. This is so typical of you, always making everything about yourself. Craig's opportunity won't wait. This is our future you're playing with. I turned my phone face down and made a cup of tea. 2 weeks later, she showed up at the house. I watched through the kitchen window as she knocked, then knocked harder, then went around to look in the side window like she had a right to inventory the place. She was there for nearly 20 minutes before she gave up and left a note. Mom, we need to sort this out. You're being childish. Call me. R. I threw it in the recycling without answering. What I did instead was open my laptop and look at Rachel's social media for the first time in months. She'd made her Christmas photos public. The table I'd never sat at, laden with food, candles lit, faces laughing. The caption read, "Grateful for our people this holiday season. Real ones only. No complications, just love." No complications. I saved the screenshot and emailed it to Patricia. I also did something I should have done much sooner. I contacted a financial advisor named Douglas Wu, who specialized in protecting the assets of older clients. Margaret had been recommended to me by a woman in my walking group whose son had tried something similar 2 years before. Douglas was methodical and calm, and did not seem the least bit surprised by anything I told him. "You'd be amazed how often this pattern shows up," he said, "particularly with recently widowed women who have liquid assets. The adult child doesn't even see it as exploitation. They genuinely believe they're entitled." He helped me restructure my accounts, moved my investments to a firm Rachel had no knowledge of, set up a paper trail that would demonstrate clearly, should anyone question it, that I was making these decisions with full professional guidance and sound mind. "If she tries to claim you were unduly influenced or mentally incompetent," Douglas said, "this documentation makes that argument very difficult." I hadn't known I'd need to protect myself from my own daughter. But there it was. The letter arrived in mid-February. Registered mail, which told me everything before I'd even opened it. A law firm in Kelowna, representing Rachel and Craig, claiming I had made changes to my estate under suspicious circumstances, potentially due to the influence of outside parties, and requesting an urgent review of my mental competency. I called Patricia from the front hall with my coat still on. "I expected this," she said. "It's a pressure tactic. They're hoping you'll fold before it gets to a hearing. They don't have a case, but they'll make noise and see what shakes loose." "What do I do?" "We prepare, starting with a formal competency assessment." Dr. Dunny Desabes. Sylvia Park was a geriatric psychiatrist at Kelowna General who had done these evaluations for years. She was brisk and precise and asked me questions for nearly 3 hours. Memory tests, reasoning exercises, detailed discussions of my financial history and the decisions I'd made and why. At the end, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, "you're one of the sharper people who sat in that chair. Your recall is excellent. Your reasoning is organized and consistent. I'll have no trouble preparing documentation to that effect." "Good," I said. "I'm going to need it." The hearing was scheduled for March. In the weeks before it, I kept finding small ways to steady myself. I joined a grief support group at the Kelowna Community Center that had evolved over the years into something more like a life support group for women navigating difficult families. I'd expected to feel embarrassed. Instead, the first evening, a woman named Gloria, 71, recently estranged from her son, looked across the circle at me and said, "You didn't cause this. You just stopped allowing it." I went home and slept better than I had in 2 months. I also heard from Craig's mother, Helen, who called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice careful and unhappy. "I want you to know I think what they did at Christmas was wrong," she said. "I was there and I didn't say anything, and I'm ashamed of that. The way Craig's been talking about this whole situation, about your money, about the will, it's not something I'm comfortable with. You deserve better than this." It was a small thing, but it mattered. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't the problem. I gave the whole story to a reporter from the Kelowna Daily Courier who'd reached out after word got around through the legal community. I laid out the documents, the timeline, the money, the Christmas Eve door. The story ran the week before the hearing. It was careful journalism, not sensationalism, but it was clear. A 67-year-old widow had the right to decide what happened to what she'd spent her life building. The morning of the hearing, I wore the gray wool blazer Ted had always said made me look like I could run a boardroom. Patricia met me at the courthouse at 8:30. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Pale wood and fluorescent light. Rachel and Craig sat on the far side with their lawyer. Rachel was dressed carefully. She didn't look at me. Their lawyer argued that a woman grieving her husband, isolated after the pandemic years, elderly and increasingly confused, had been manipulated by self-interested professional advisors into making irrational decisions that harmed her own family. He called Rachel to the stand. She cried. Real tears, or convincing ones, I genuinely couldn't tell. She talked about how much she missed me, how worried she'd been, how the changes to my will were so unlike the mother she knew. Then Patricia went to work. She entered the Christmas Eve text chain, the New Year's Day call asking for $40,000 for a cannabis investment in Kamloops, the social media post about real ones only, the financial record showing $54,000 in transfers over less than 3 years, each one followed by a brief warm period and then renewed distance. Dr. Park's assessment. Douglas's documentation of my decision-making process. Helen's written statement. I took the stand and told the truth. Simply, without drama, and the same voice I'd used for 30 years of teaching middle school English in the city. I knew these kids. I knew how to be clear. The judge, the Honorable David Kowalchuk, called a 90-minute recess. When we came back, he was brief. Mrs. Caldwell is plainly competent to manage her affairs and make decisions about her estate. The evidence presented does not come close to establishing undue influence or diminished capacity. This application is dismissed. I heard Rachel make a sound I couldn't identify. I looked straight ahead. Outside, in the March cold, Patricia squeezed my arm. It's done, she said. It was done. I won't pretend the weeks after that were easy. Some mornings I woke up and the first thing I felt was grief. The plain, ordinary grief of loving someone who turned out to be someone different than you thought. Rachel was my daughter. She had been for many years my best companion. That doesn't disappear because it breaks. But life has its own momentum when you let it. I started volunteering at the hospice twice a week. Sitting with people, sometimes talking, sometimes just being present. It reminded me that the most important things we can give each other are time and attention, and that I had plenty of both to spare. I took a watercolor class at the Rotary Center for the Arts. I was not gifted. The instructor, a patient young man named whoever he was, said the point wasn't technical skill but being willing to see. I bought a good set of paints. I filled 3 sketchbooks with imperfect, earnest, satisfying attempts at the lake and the hills, and Ted's roses still growing in the back garden. Gloria, from the support group, became a real friend. We started walking the Kettle Valley Trail together on Saturday mornings, regardless of weather, because she said the cold kept you honest. She introduced me to her friends, and they became my friends. And before long, I had a Thursday dinner that rotated between 5 houses, easy and loud and nothing to do with obligation. I heard things about Rachel through the community, the way you do in a city this size. The legal costs had been significant. Craig had tried to move forward with the Kamloops venture, and it had collapsed badly, as those things often do. They were selling the Vernon house. I didn't feel satisfied by any of it. I felt sad for Lily and Owen, who were small and had done nothing to deserve the instability their parents had created. I left the door open, in my own mind, for the day when they were old enough to come find me themselves. Helen and I had coffee once a month now. She told me, gently, that Rachel's marriage was struggling, that Craig blamed her and she blamed him, and that neither of them had come to terms with the choices they'd made. She knows she was wrong, Helen said once. She just doesn't know how to get back from it. Maybe she'd find a way. Maybe she wouldn't. That was hers to live with, not mine. I turned 68 in June and spent my birthday on a train. The Rocky Mountaineer, eastbound through the mountains. Something Ted and I had always said we'd do, and never got to. I booked a single sleeper compartment and sat in the glass-top dome car, watching the Rockies come up around me, stone and snow and sky in colors I couldn't have mixed in any art class, and I thought, this, this is what the rest looks like. I wrote about it for the community newsletter. People responded, more than I expected. A woman in Penticton emailed to say my piece had given her courage to stop waiting for her family to give her permission to live her own life. I wrote back. We started corresponding. She became someone I looked forward to hearing from each week. My house is mine, completely. I've repainted the guest room the soft yellow I've always wanted, moved Ted's study into a proper reading room with 2 good lamps and a chair by the window where Sunny, my ridiculous rescue beagle, sleeps on my feet in the evenings. The kitchen smells like the things I want to make now, not the things I made to earn someone's warmth. Last Christmas Eve, I hosted dinner. Gloria and her sister, Helen, and her husband, 2 women from the hospice, an older couple from my watercolor class, who'd moved from Winnipeg and had nobody close yet. We ate tourtière. We drank good Okanagan wine. Someone brought a plum pudding and set it on fire in the kitchen, and we all came running to watch. It was loud and imperfect and completely full. I thought about Rachel once, briefly, lighting the candles before everyone arrived. I wondered if she'd thought about me. Maybe. Maybe not. But I was standing in my own home on Christmas Eve, surrounded by people who were there because they wanted to be. People who had chosen me as freely as I had chosen them. And that, I realized, is not a consolation prize for the family you lost. That is the family you build. You don't need permission from anyone to start again. You don't need your children's blessing to choose yourself. You've given enough and been patient enough and hoped enough. Sometimes walking away is the most generous thing you can do for yourself and, in the end, for them. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the life waiting on the other side of that door is bigger than anything you left behind. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. And if this story found you at the right moment, please subscribe. You're not alone in this, not even close.